When my wife and I were doing IVF, I discovered she secretly swapped my sperm for her lover's. I swapped my sperm back and used my ex-girlfriend's eggs instead. 25 years later, her lover brought his illegitimate son to claim family ties and force me into a divorce. A paternity test revealed I was the biological father all along. After the divorce, I made her leave with nothing. She and her lover turned against each other and ended up in prison, and the illegitimate son became a male escort. My son Ethan Miller and I returned home after an overseas trip for a medical cooperation project and stopped dead in our tracks. A large crowd of distant relatives, people we rarely saw, had all shown up. The setup made it look like the Miller family estate was hosting a major family gathering. What caught my eye most was Michael White, sitting in the center of the sofa, his eyes red-rimmed. Sarah Miller, my good wife, who was rarely home, was tenderly holding him, her face full of sympathy, softly comforting him. I raised an eyebrow, put my suitcase down, and looked at Sarah Miller. What's the occasion today? Why all the fuss? Ethan Miller followed behind me, coolly crossing his arms, staring at Michael White with an expression of disdain. He already had a hunch about this man's identity. Eleanor Miller sat at the head of the table. Her expression looked displeased, and she seemed hesitant to speak. Before Sarah Miller could speak, Michael White cried and lunged towards Ethan Miller. "My dear son, I am your biological dad." Ethan Miller quickly dodged away, frowning with disgust, as if Michael White was a piece of filth. He took a step back, his tone cold. "My dad's name is David Miller. This kid is truly my loyal supporter." I took Ethan Miller's hand, gave him a reassuring look, then raised my hand and punched Michael White in the face. The dull thud of the punch echoed in the living room. "Stop claiming relatives you're not." My tone was cold, my eyes like knives. Sarah Miller shot up, solicitously helped Michael White up, pointed at me, and yelled angrily, "David Miller, are you crazy? How dare you hit Michael?" She raised her hand as if to hit me. Ethan Miller, quick-witted and swift, stepped forward and slapped Sarah Miller. "You dare hit my dad?" Ethan Miller's voice was low, but carried undeniable authority. Sarah Miller froze, enraged, and raised her hand, wanting to hit Ethan Miller. But Michael White pulled her back, feigning tears and crying, "Sarah, don't hit him, that's our son." This display of fatherly affection from him was sickening. Sarah Miller lowered her hand and glared fiercely at Ethan Miller. "If it weren't for your biological dad, I'd teach you a lesson today." Ethan Miller sneered, "Ha, I'd like to see what you've got to discipline me." That sharp look in his eyes was just like mine when I was young. I felt a secret satisfaction. "That's my son, raised right?" A respected family elder cleared his throat, trying to quell the chaotic scene. "Quiet down, everyone." His deep voice carried undeniable authority. Everyone gradually quieted down, their gaze fixed on the elder. He looked at Sarah Miller. "Sarah, you called everyone here. What is this really about?" Sarah Miller took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. She reached out and put her arm around Michael White's shoulders, displaying great affection. "Actually, today, I have an important announcement to make." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, finally resting on Ethan Miller and me. I watched her calmly, wondering what kind of show she was about to put on. "Ethan Miller, he isn't David Miller's biological son." Sarah Miller's voice was low, but it was like a bomb that exploded in the living room. Ethan Miller whipped his head around to look at me, his eyes full of shock. I signaled him to stay calm. The surrounding relatives began whispering, stirring with excitement like a pack of sharks smelling blood. "Back then, when we were doing IVF." Sarah Miller paused, as if finding it difficult to say. "The doctor said David Miller's sperm quality wasn't good. To avoid hurting his desire to be a father, I switched it for Michael White's. This idiot acted sneakily, and now she's turning around and throwing dirt on my name." Sarah Miller's malicious gaze landed on me, seeming to expect me to explode in anger. However, I remained calm and collected, so she could only continue her performance. "Today, I called everyone here to witness." She looked affectionately at Michael White, Ethan Miller being acknowledged as his biological father. The surrounding relatives were instantly in an uproar. "Ethan Miller isn't David Miller's son. He must acknowledge his biological father." "Exactly. He's held the position of Miller family son-in-law for so many years, it's time he stepped down and let someone else take over. David Miller, all these years, has controlled the Miller family's business. Now that the truth is revealed, it's time for him to step down from Miller Corp." Listening to the chatter, I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. These relatives with ulterior motives, whom I've been suppressing and removing from company management in recent years, can only profit from year-end dividends and hold a lot of resentment towards me. They are now happy to watch the drama unfold, seeing Sarah Miller fall out with me, so they can return to the company and regain their influence. Ethan Miller, seeing the relatives' undisguised greed in their eyes, squeezed my hand tightly. I spoke, "Ethan Miller will only ever be my child." The voice was low, but it was firm and resonant. Michael White put on a helpless expression, and choked out, "David, how long are you going to keep deceiving yourself?" I wasn't deceiving myself. Ethan Miller truly is my child. Sarah Miller and Michael White really think they could fool me. Back then, Sarah Miller was having trouble getting pregnant, so we decided to do IVF. Before the embryo was created, I happened to catch Sarah Miller secretly tampering with my sperm storage locker with a nurse. I even heard her calling Michael White, her face beaming, saying she had successfully swapped in his sperm. I didn't make a scene then. Without saying a word, I turned around and gave the doctor a large sum of money, asking her to switch it back using the extra sperm I had provided earlier. I even kindly asked the doctor to swap Sarah Miller's eggs for my ex-girlfriend's. The day the embryo was created, Sarah Miller and I witnessed the birth of this miracle together. She was abnormally happy, probably thinking it was her and Michael White's child. Watching her foolish look, I could barely contain my laughter. All these years, I watched her dote on Ethan Miller like a performing clown, and I can't even describe how satisfying it felt. She wanted to trick me, but never expected she'd unknowingly raised someone else's child for over 20 years. Sarah Miller interrupted my thoughts and mocked me, stubbornly refusing to admit defeat. "Although Ethan Miller has been with you all these years, the sperm wasn't yours. His biological dad is Michael White." My tone was calm, but held a hint of provocation. "Are you daydreaming? If you don't believe it, we can get a paternity test." Sarah Miller's tone was firm. "I also want to divorce you. You were my lovesick fool. You coerced me into marrying you and being with you for 25 years. I've been more than generous to you." When she proposed divorce, a hint of delight showed on her face. "It seems she's been thinking about it for a long time. Hi. She dares say she's been more than generous to me. I married into her family and lived under her roof for 25 years, and I slept alone for 25 years. While I was raising our child alone, she was having affairs with Michael White. While I was struggling in the business world to uphold the Miller family's reputation, she was living a life of luxury and excess in entertainment venues. However, she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't her lovesick fool because I loved her. Marrying her was only to gain the status of the Miller family's husband, and gain control of Miller Corp. And now, Miller Corp is already completely under my control. Therefore, Sarah Miller is no longer useful. Divorce is fine. I shrugged indifferently. But a paternity test is unnecessary. I am certain Ethan Miller is my child. Ethan Miller looked at me, his gaze firm. "Dad, I believe you." Sarah Miller and Michael White immediately panicked. "Ethan Miller, don't you believe Mom?" Ethan Miller ignored her, just stayed close to me. Just then, a boy who looked like a college student burst in. He walked straight up to Ethan Miller, calling out excitedly, "Ethan." Everyone present froze. It was one thing for another dad to show up, but how did a brother show up too? Looking at the boy whose face resembled Michael White's, I vaguely had a suspicion. This was probably Sarah Miller and Michael White's illegitimate son. They hid it well enough. I hadn't discovered him for over 20 years. It seems this drama is even more exciting than I imagined. Eleanor Miller sat at the head of the table, looking at the boy with quiet authority. "Sarah, what is going on?" The atmosphere in the living room froze again. The boy's eyes looked red-rimmed, as if he was about to cry. "Ethan," he called out, "my name is Mark Miller. I've always known about you." He spoke a little haltingly. His voice was low but carried a slight tremor. He secretly glanced at me, then quickly lowered his head, as if afraid I would blame him. My dad, he often told me about you, saying you were excellent, very handsome." Michael White began to sob right on cue, his shoulders shaking. "Ethan Miller, my precious son, Dad has truly missed you all these years." He looked up, his eyes tear-filled, as if he had suffered the greatest grievance. "Mark Miller, he has also missed you a lot. We often secretly went to see you." Mark Miller quickly nodded, adding eagerly, "It's true. Ethan, I attended your school just so I could be closer to you." He took out a stack of photos from his pocket and carefully handed them to Ethan Miller. "These are your photos." I secretly took them. Ethan Miller took the stack of photos, flipping through them. Photos of him included, wearing a graduation gown, smiling brightly, looking tired after playing basketball, debating with classmates, looking spirited. Ethan Miller felt creeped out. All these years, a creepy guy had been hiding near him, watching him creepily and secretly taking his pictures. Sarah Miller wasn't idle either. She walked up to Eleanor Miller, pointing at Mark Miller, her tone serious. Eleanor, this is a grandson of the Miller family estate. The extended family is also here to witness today. Please accept him. Sarah Miller was also a little cunning. She knew that after her father passed away, the one who really had a say in the Miller house was Eleanor Miller. Her inviting the extended family was merely to pressure Eleanor Miller into acknowledging this child. She was confident that if Eleanor Miller agreed to let Mark Miller be officially recognized into the family, then I would be unable to object. Besides, over these 25 years, she had also observed my respect and attentiveness to Eleanor Miller. Mark Miller was very sharp. He immediately turned to Eleanor Miller and politely called out, "Grandma." Eleanor Miller looked at Mark Miller, then looked at me, her gaze complex. She didn't immediately respond to Mark Miller. I knew Eleanor Miller felt for me. I didn't want to make things difficult for Eleanor Miller, so I spoke up to break the awkward silence. "Sarah Miller, having this illegitimate son be officially recognized into the family and inherit the Miller family estate is your real goal, isn't it? Why drag Ethan Miller into this?" I turned to look at Ethan Miller and exchanged a look. Even if Ethan Miller isn't my biological child, he is still the only child under my name, David Miller. All the assets under my name, real estate, stocks, funds, including 20% of Miller Corp.'s shares, I will transfer entirely to him. Ethan Miller, if this is the case, will you stay with me, or go with your mom and this dad, whose legitimacy is questionable? My boy's little brain was working fast. His eyes darted, and he immediately understood what I meant. He immediately rushed into my arms, his little face rubbing against my arm, and called out crisply, "Mom now has a brother, and the assets aren't left to me. Of course, I'm staying with Dad." Good boy. Truly a result of my careful guidance. He stated the true goal by framing it ironically. Hearing that I was willing to give all the assets to Ethan Miller, Michael White's eyes instantly lit up, shining brilliantly. He knew I had a lot of assets under my name. Jewelry and valuables, real estate alone were no small amount. Not to mention the 20% of Miller Corp.'s shares, it was simply a fortune. Greed, naked greed, was undisguised on his face. He leaned in close to Sarah Miller and whispered something. When the old master passed away, to maintain a balance of power, he divided the 60% of Miller Corp shares he held into 4 parts, 20% to David Miller, 20% to Eleanor Miller, 10% to Ethan Miller, and you only got 10%. If David Miller transfers his shares to Ethan Miller, and later we manage to coax Ethan Miller's shares from him, you'll have 40% in your hands. The priority now is to make David Miller give up the shares and assets he holds. Make him leave with nothing, and then bring Ethan Miller over to our side. Sarah Miller thought about it. Michael White was right. So she stepped forward, putting on a motherly expression for Ethan Miller. "Ethan Miller, your brother can be independent. He won't compete with you for assets. I am also willing to give all my assets to you." She paused and added a condition, provided that you must go with Michael White for a paternity test. If the test results show you are biological father and son, you must acknowledge Michael White as your dad, and treat him well. Ethan Miller secretly glanced at me, and I gave a subtle nod. Okay. Ethan Miller agreed immediately, but he also cunningly added a condition. "However, before we go for the paternity test, Dad and Mom must first go with me to the notary office and transfer all the assets to my name as a free gift." I inwardly applauded. This kid is truly sharp. What you get in writing is real. Don't believe verbal promises. At this point, those extended family members, who relished the drama, became really agitated. What Michael White could think of, they realized too. Each of them eagerly anticipating, as if they saw immense wealth beckoning to them. Sarah Miller has no business sense. If Miller Corp was under his name, wouldn't it be theirs to manipulate as they pleased? Good. That's how it should be. One extended family member led the cheering. "I'll contact someone at the notary office right away." Another extended family member took out their phone and made a call. The group was bustling about excitedly, as if celebrating something joyous. While they were busy, Eleanor Miller worriedly tried to stop me. "My child, are you sure you want to give away the assets?" I smiled and shook my head, comforting her. "Eleanor, don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Eleanor Miller had always known how capable I was. Seeing that I wasn't flustered, she didn't try to convince me further. With their help, the assets under Sarah Miller's name and mine, except for $50,000 each for living expenses, were all transferred to Ethan Miller's name. In the notary office, Sarah Miller and Michael White looked at Ethan Miller with apparent fondness, as if they saw the days ahead when they would lead Miller Corp. And wield significant power, smiling happily. Watching them daydreaming, and then looking at my son, who had instantly become a multi-millionaire, I also smiled. But Sarah Miller losing a fortune wasn't enough. I also needed to strip Michael White bare. "Michael White, Didn't you say you loved Ethan Miller? Aren't you going to show it? I spoke casually, my gaze sweeping over Michael White's carefully groomed, seemingly makeup-free face. In the past 20-something years, I raised Ethan Miller for you, and spent millions. I don't need your compensation. You can just give the money to Ethan Miller. After all, I love him the most. Ethan Miller took advantage of the situation from the side. Mr. White, you've been with my mom for over 20 years, you must have a few million, right? Since we're already at the notary office, why don't you show me your loyalty? Otherwise, I'll seriously doubt that you love me, and that you only want to acknowledge me because of the Miller family estate behind me. His face stiffened, and he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Giving the money would pain him. Not giving the money, Ethan Miller would doubt his motives for claiming family ties. He had to risk something to gain something. Michael White gritted his teeth, took out a card from his bag, and handed it to Ethan Miller. Ethan Miller, Dad of course loves you. Here is $5 million. It's the money Dad saved for over 10 years. Ethan Miller unhesitatingly grasped the bank card and called the notary staff to immediately notarize it. Michael White was smiling beside him, but his smile was a little twisted, as if he was being ripped off. The testing center was chosen by Sarah Miller. She was afraid I would tamper with it, and chose the most authoritative forensic lab. I scoffed coldly. So self-assured. After the testing center staff collected Michael White's, and Ethan Miller's blood samples, I had them also collect Sarah Miller's blood to do the test together. Sarah Miller looked at me incredulously. David Miller, are you crazy? Ethan Miller is undeniably my child. I smirked maliciously. Well, since we're already here, might as well get it all done. Although Ethan Miller didn't understand why I was doing this, he knew I definitely had a purpose. So he insisted that Sarah Miller also get a paternity test. Sarah Miller was now treating Ethan Miller like royalty, so she agreed to his request. As we were leaving the testing center, Michael White's son, Mark Miller, holding a bouquet of flowers, arrived late. Ethan, he called out to Ethan Miller affectionately, handed him the bouquet of flowers, and made to hug him. Ethan Miller looked as disgusted as if he'd swallowed a fly, and pushed him away. Don't touch me. This guy was half a head taller than Ethan Miller, and looked decent enough on the outside. Ethan Miller, this is your brother. Michael White quickly urged, family should love and care for each other. Ethan Miller rolled his eyes. The test results aren't out yet, so don't go claiming relatives just yet, okay? I won't intrude on your happy family reunion, I said flatly. Sarah Miller, let's go to City Hall now and finalize the divorce. Because no one had assets under their name anymore, and there were no custody rights to negotiate, Sarah Miller and I didn't even need to sign a divorce agreement. We just went directly to City Hall and got divorced. Michael White's eyes widened, thrilled. He clearly hadn't expected our divorce to be so quick. He thought I would cling on and refuse to divorce. But Ethan Miller stayed closely by my side. He saw how close Ethan Miller and I were and became envious again. After Ethan Miller went to the parking lot to get the car, Michael White finally seized the opportunity and spoke sarcastically to me while I was alone. David Miller, Sarah Miller never loved you. Do you know why Ethan's name is Ethan? It's because of Michael White. Sarah Miller wrapped her arm around Michael White, her face smug. Once the paternity test results are out, Ethan Miller will naturally come back to us. Mark Miller also dropped his innocent act from when he was in front of Ethan Miller, acting arrogant and overbearing. Now all the money belongs to Ethan. Once the paternity test results are out, you'll be living on the streets. I didn't bother responding to their foolish taunts. Sarah Miller didn't get a response from me, feeling the situation was settled, and revealed her true colors. You've controlled Miller Corp for so many years. Now it's my turn to run things. You really were using Ethan Miller to scheme for Miller Corp. I sneered. So what? Sarah Miller looked indifferent. Now all the assets have been transferred to Ethan Miller. Just wait for the paternity test results to come out. Then, I will be the true owner of Miller Corp. Then I'll wait, and see if you actually have the good fortune to truly control Miller Corp. My eyes were cold. Calculating their chances, they were certain of victory. But they didn't know they never stood a chance from the very beginning. While I was handing over my duties at the company, Todd showed up, kicked out the general manager, and strutted right in. He plopped himself down in the leather chair, crossed his legs, and declared that his brother, Leo, was the chairman, and **** was the general manager. Everyone heard him and dared not stop him, but I wasn't afraid to put him in his place. Get him out of here. A few security guards immediately stepped forward to escort Todd out. How dare you touch me? Todd jumped up, pointing and yelling at the guards. My brother is the chairman. I'm his own brother. You lackeys, just try to lay a hand on me. He then turned and cursed at me. You bitch. You've been kicked out of the Sterling family. You have no right to order Sterling Corp employees around. He ranted, shoving the guards and trying to get at me to hit me. He was completely out of control. Just then, Leo arrived. What's going on? He asked, his face cold. Leo, you're just in time. Todd instantly put on a wronged expression. This old man is telling the security guards to kick me out. This is the company. You have no business making a scene here. Leo looked at him coldly. Also, I am not your brother. Leo, how can you talk to your brother like that? Michael arrived as well. You're real brothers. Your brother will help you with company matters in the future. Otherwise, without family backing you, you'll be taken advantage of. Leo scoffed. Get them both out of here. Seeing that the soft approach didn't work, Michael started making a scene, refusing to let the security guards touch him. I am the husband of Sarah, the heir to Sterling Corp, and Leo's real father. This corporation is mine too. I sneered, throw them out. Don't let them dirty up the place. The security guards understood exactly whose company this was now. They grabbed the two arrogant fools and dragged them right out. Michael, however, was still yelling, David, you just wait. When the DNA test results come out tomorrow, I'm going to make you beg me for scraps. Looking at his pathetic state, I said, don't worry, I've been waiting for those DNA test results. Finally, the day Michael had long awaited arrived. I woke up extra early specifically, and put a lot of effort into getting dressed. After all, I had to look sharp to witness Michael's humiliation. Besides Eleanor, Sarah still invited the extended family to the forensic testing center to witness the results, probably hoping more people would be there to laugh at me. Heh, naive fool. She wanted everyone to laugh at me, but she was the biggest joke herself. Before looking at the results, I asked Sarah with a half smile, you chose this forensic testing center yourself. You won't object to the DNA test results, will you? Sarah stood tall and swore confidently, of course not. I, Sarah, always keep my word. I almost couldn't help but laugh. Truly, she wouldn't believe it until she saw the proof. The technician hadn't returned yet when Michael started his performance. He intimately linked his arm through Sarah's and leaned his head on her shoulder. Sarah, when the results are out, our family of 3 can finally be together. As he spoke, he gave me a provocative look. I simply ignored him and turned to look at Leo. Indeed, Leo also had a cold expression, completely ignoring Michael's performance. Michael met with a cold shoulder and felt a bit awkward, but he quickly adjusted his expression and turned to tell Leo, from now on, I'm your dad. Anything you want, just tell Dad. As he spoke, he took an exquisite small box from his bag and handed it to Leo. This is a watch Dad bought for you, a recognition gift. Do you like it? Leo didn't even look at it and said coldly, I don't need it. Michael's smile froze. Sarah quickly tried to smooth things over. Leo, your dad meant well. I don't need his good intentions. Leo interrupted her. I only have one dad, and that's David. I felt a surge of warmth in my heart. My son always took my side. Just then, the technician returned, holding 3 sets of DNA test results. Michael, Sarah, and Todd immediately perked up, their eyes fixed intently on the files in the technician's hand. Their eyes were like wolves spotting prey. They looked at me triumphantly, as if the next second I would be ruined, and they could live a life of luxury. I almost couldn't help but laugh. The technician opened the envelope. Michael's breathing became rapid, and Sarah, her nails painted bright red, was digging her nails into his arm. Sarah was trembling with excitement, her face flushed red, looking like she was about to explode. She was muttering, Leo, our family can finally be legitimate and together. I noticed the look she gave me, as if I were already like a defeated stray dog. Michael was even more dramatic, his body trembling slightly. Leo, Dad has finally proved himself. Todd, that fool, was even more impatient, walking right up to Leo. Leo, when we get back to Sterling Corp later, you have to immediately make me general manager. I'm your real brother, only I will truly help you. He had an expression of pure entitlement, as if Leo was certain to help him, and the position of general manager was already his. I watched the 3 of them making a spectacle of themselves and sneered inwardly. Until the very last moment, no one knows who the real fool is. The technician cleared his throat and began to read the DNA test results. According to the DNA comparison results, Mr. Michael and Mr. Leo. He deliberately paused, making Michael and Sarah even more nervous. They were straining their necks, hanging on his every word. The surrounding Sterling family members also held their breath, wearing various expressions, waiting to see me humiliated. There is no parent-child relationship. The air froze. Sarah's eyes went wide, and she screamed hysterically, like she had gone crazy. Impossible. There must be a mistake. Michael also screamed, how could this happen? How could there be no parent-child relationship? His face instantly turned deathly pale. He couldn't hide the panic on his face. You must have misread it. Let me see. Todd snatched the report, and after seeing the result clearly, he slumped into a chair, muttering to himself, how could this happen? I had the technician read out my DNA test results with Leo. According to the DNA comparison results, I and Leo are biological father and son. There was an uproar around us. Sarah looked thunderstruck. Impossible, she muttered to herself in shock. Seeing Leo, Eleanor, and everyone else looking like they couldn't figure it out, I kindly explained, I saw you tampering with it back then, so I switched my sperm back. Watching her face turn increasingly pale, I continued, oh, right? While I was at it, I switched your egg with my ex-girlfriend's. The entire place was shocked into silence by this news. Eleanor jerked her head up, her cloudy eyes filled with shock. I looked at Sarah and said word by word, Leo is not your child. Congratulations, you've been raising someone else's child for 20-odd years. Hearing this, Sarah snatched the DNA test results report between her and Leo from the technician's hand. After seeing the result, her eyes instantly turned blood red, and she rushed over fiercely, trying to hit me. Bitch, she roared angrily. The bodyguard behind me, quick as a flash, blocked her and pushed her violently to the ground. I looked down at her condescendingly, my gaze cold. Hearing this news, Michael, like clutching at a straw, rushed to her side and said in a shrill voice, Sarah, Leo isn't yours, so he's not a Sterling. The heir can only be Todd. His nails painted bright red were almost digging into Sarah's flesh. Sarah realized, jerked her head up, and a vicious glint flashed in her eyes. She stumbled to her feet and walked to Eleanor, who was already stunned into silence. Mom, esteemed extended family, you all heard and saw it. Leo is not my child. She pointed at me, spittle flying everywhere, shouting hoarsely, he is David and his ex-girlfriend's bastard. We can't let the Sterling family's assets fall into an outsider's hands. Michael and son also started yelling. Right. Kick that bitch Leo out. The Sterling heir can only be me, Todd. Eleanor, always composed, had recovered from the shock. She completely ignored Sarah. Her expression was an expression no one could decipher. Rarely losing her composure like this, she asked me with a trembling voice, David, is that true? Seeing her like this, my eyes welled up slightly. It is true. Sarah was dissatisfied with Eleanor's reaction and shook her hand. Mom, hurry and announce Todd is the heir. Eleanor had composed herself. She brushed her hand away and asked calmly, do you know who David's ex-girlfriend is? Sarah asked frantically, who it is, what does it matter to me? Anyway, Leo isn't our bloodline. David's ex-girlfriend is your older sister, Julia. So Leo is still a Sterling child, and the only legitimate heir. Eleanor's words were like a bomb thrown into the crowd. The Sterling family tradition back then, as I'm sure you all know, only allowed the eldest legitimate children to inherit the main fortune. Only when this line died out would it be the turn of the illegitimate child. Eleanor stared sharply at Sarah and warned, after Julia had her accident back then, the old man had no choice but to bring you home. Sarah, don't forget your place. Sarah, reminded of her place by Eleanor, turned deathly pale. The reason Sarah was named Sarah was actually a reminder that the Sterling family always prioritized Julia in everything. Back when my father-in-law was young, his own father was tricked into having him by a female secretary. But the Sterling family valued a pure bloodline. Not just any riff-raff child was fit to enter the Sterling family gates. The child he acknowledged was only Julia, born from him and Eleanor, who came from a distinguished family. Besides giving alimony on time, my father-in-law completely ignored her. But fate is unpredictable. Julia, the heir my father-in-law had carefully trained, had an accident at a construction site while inspecting a company project, and became in a vegetative state. Having no choice, my father-in-law turned his attention to Sarah. He gave Sarah conditions. She could return to the Sterling family, but I had to marry into the family because my dad had saved my father-in-law's life. Sarah had no feelings for me, and was still in love with someone else. She didn't originally want to marry me. But she was very clear about the benefits of returning to the Sterling family. So, seeing that I seemed infatuated with her, she married me. Michael originally looked down on her when she was poor and had nothing. But when she suddenly became a Sterling daughter, he agreed to be her lover. Sarah was quite devoted to Michael. The reason we had to do IVF was that she remained faithful to Michael, by not sleeping with her husband, and wouldn't touch me at all. They originally planned to wait for my father-in-law to die and then take over Sterling Corp, but unexpectedly my father-in-law had an ace up his sleeve, dividing his shares into 4 parts to create a balance of power between us, and appointed me chairman to manage Sterling Corp, not allowing Sarah to hold a position in the company. So Sarah could only receive dividends based on her shares at the end of the year. She had no real power these past years and was very resentful. I don't believe Leo is my sister's child. Why should I believe it just because David says so? Sarah was still making her last struggle. I gave her a mocking look and took out another DNA test results report from my bag. This is the DNA test results report for Leo and Julia. I opened the report and showed it to everyone. If you don't believe it, that's fine. Julia is in the rehabilitation center and Leo is also here. Everyone can apply for a national-level testing agency to collect samples on site and conduct the test again. Leo is sterling blood. I believe everyone will be fully convinced. Michael and Son were also stunned. They never expected that Leo was actually Julia's child. Eleanor still looked calm and steady, but there was a fleeting tear in her eye. The extended family began to whisper. So Leo is Julia's child. This means Leo is the real sterling heir. It seems Sarah, this illegitimate child, can't possibly try to seize the Sterling family's assets. The look they gave Sarah was full of contempt. Sarah collapsed onto the ground, as if all her strength had been drained, her eyes vacant. She had not let Leo acknowledge his biological family, and now, the inheritance was his anyway. Michael and Son also deflated and wilted. The extended family understood that Sarah was no match for me. There was no benefit to be gained by following Sarah. So, they all stood up and quickly dispersed. Sarah stared at me, thinking about something unknown. She got up as if swallowing her pride, and walked up to me fawningly. David, I know you love me. Are you just angry because I was seeing other women? I promised to break up with Michael. Will you let me return to the Sterling family? I looked at her, full of pity, and spoke slowly. Sarah, you are wrong. I have never loved you. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. What did you say? Her lips trembling, she asked, then why did you always stare infatuatedly at me before? And insist on marrying me? I explained coolly, because you look like Julia. I looked at your appearance for solace. Marrying you was to protect the family business for Julia. You replaced Julia as a Sterling daughter, and my status as a son-in-law marrying into the Sterling family was my ticket to take control of Sterling Corp, preventing greedy relatives from seizing power. You must be very curious, why Julia was my ex-girlfriend. Why my father-in-law was willing to hand Sterling Corp over to me to manage, rather than you, his biological daughter. Why Eleanor has treated me like a son all these years. You weren't at the Sterling family when you were little, so you don't know that although I grew up in the countryside, my father-in-law, to thank my dad for saving his life, would bring me to stay at the Sterling family villa every winter and summer break. Julia and I were childhood sweethearts and had already fallen in love. Eleanor raised me like a son, and my father-in-law trained me as Julia's supportive partner. Julia and I received the same elite education. I laughed out loud, like looking at a fool. How ridiculous. You actually thought I was just a country bumpkin, who married into the Sterling family based on my father's life-saving favor, and foolishly thought I loved you. Sarah looked thunderstruck and stood there stunned. She had always thought I loved her desperately. But now, she finally knew she was just a pathetic substitute. Everything she possessed was built on a lie. Now, the lie was exposed. She had nothing left. Sarah completely broke down. We were all acting for 25 years. Now, the play is over. It's time for the finale. I had the housekeeper pack her things, and kicked her out of the Sterling family villa. Mom, I previously collaborated on a project with a foreign medical institution about stimulating the nerves of patients in a vegetative state to promote awakening. Eleanor jerked her head up, and a glimmer of hope ignited in her eyes. You mean? I nodded. Julia has already undergone several courses of treatment. Her brain waves are very active. The doctors say she will wake up soon. Eleanor was very happy, and tears streamed down her face. Julia, my Julia. And Sarah, who had been kicked out of the Sterling family, stumbled down the road like a stray dog who lost everything. 25 years of false prosperity shattered overnight. She returned to the apartment she had previously bought for Michael, but Michael was not very welcoming. It's all your fault. Now we have nothing. Sarah jerked her head around, her eyes blood red. My fault. If you hadn't switched the sperm back then, would we be here today? Michael was stunned. He hadn't expected Sarah to push all the blame onto him. Didn't you agree back then? Sarah grabbed his arm with terrifying force. Shut up. What's the use of saying all this now? We have no money. Do you know that? How can we live with only $50,000? Michael struggled to shake off her hand. Then what should we do? We can't possibly go out and get jobs, can we? Sarah slumped and let go of his hand. Yes, what should we do? She was used to a life of luxury, used to feeling like the center of attention. Now, she had nothing left. Michael suddenly thought of something. $5 million. Leo still has the $5 million I gave him. Sir's eyes lit up. Let's go. To find Leo. The two of them stumbled to Leo's apartment. They rang the doorbell for a long time, before Leo slowly opened the door. Seeing the two of them, there wasn't a trace of surprise on his face. What are you doing here? Michael pushed Leo aside and rushed into the apartment. Give me back the money. Leo sneered. Why should I? Michael pointed at Leo, trembling with rage. That's my money. Leo walked to the sofa, sat down, and crossed his legs. Mr. Michael, that $5 million has been notarized as an unconditional gift to me. Therefore, I don't need to return it to you. Michael just felt everything go black before his eyes. You. He pointed at Leo, stammering you for a long time, but couldn't say a complete sentence. With a sharp pain in his chest, he blacked out and collapsed straight down from anger. Sarah was terrified. Michael. She rushed over, hugged Michael, and shouted hoarsely. Looking at this scene, Leo still kindly called 911. Then, as if nothing had happened, he continued reading the book in his hand. Sarah and Michael, who didn't get the money, blamed each other. After the $50,000 was used up, Sarah had no money left. Michael wouldn't possibly take out his remaining over $100,000 in private savings to support Sarah. He urged Sarah to go find a job, or he would kick her out too. Later, I, kindly, called a headhunter, and asked her to arrange a job for Sarah. After some time, I invited Leo to have dinner with me. On the way to the restaurant, I was humming a tune. Leo asked me why I was so happy. I said it was because there was a good show to watch later. Sitting in a private room on the second floor of a restaurant with an open kitchen, Leo looked through the transparent glass and saw Sarah, who used to never lifted a finger, was actually wearing a chef's uniform, cooking live in the first floor restaurant. He raised an eyebrow and looked at me. That's it. Of course not just that, I said, smiling and telling him to wait patiently. Keep watching. A moment later, we saw Michael enter the restaurant with a good-looking woman with a nice figure. The two of them were talking and laughing, very intimately. Sarah naturally saw them too. Her expression instantly froze. Michael. What are you doing here? Michael didn't look at her at all and continued flirting with the woman. Sir's voice rose a few notches. Michael. I'm asking you a question. Only then did Michael impatiently raise his head and glance sideways at her. What? Eating, of course. Are you blind? Sarah pointed at the woman. You and her. Michael suddenly laughed, shaking with laughter. What about me and Kevin? Is it bothering you? Sir's face turned beet red. She's my girlfriend. What? Is there a problem? Sarah staggered back a few steps. Girlfriend. You actually. What did I actually do? Michael looked at her provocatively. I'm telling you, Sarah, I've been with Kevin for over 20 years. The money you gave me before, I used it all to support her. He paused and added, also, Todd is also my and Kevin's son. The color drained from Sir's face. Her soul drained away. She stared fixedly at Michael, her eyes full of disbelief and despair. Kevin at the side laughed contemptuously. Big sister, you've been completely played for a fool. Sarah felt her world completely collapse. The man she deeply loved had betrayed her. Her son wasn't hers either. More than 20 years of effort only got her a joke in return. Then, she went back to her previous workstation, grabbed a knife, and rushed back, lunged at Michael, stabbing him like she was crazy, screaming hysterically and roaring angrily. You bitch. You ruined me. You ruined everything for me. Michael screamed, and blood instantly stained his clothes red. Leo watched in horror at the homicide happening in front of him, while I calmly drank my tea. The police arrived quickly and took Sarah away. Leo asked me blankly, Dad, the show you wanted me to see was this. I put down my teacup, and earnestly instructed him, Leo, Dad will teach you today. Don't go easy on your enemies. Sarah and the others attempted to seize the property. Kicking her out should have been enough. Why be so ruthless? Leo was puzzled. Because your mom was injured at the construction site back then. It wasn't an accident. She was tricked by Sarah into going to the site, and the out-of-control truck at the site had its brakes cut by Michael. I tried to remain calm, but my voice still contained hatred. I can never forget to this day how I felt seeing Julia covered in blood. These past 25 years, I wished I could kill Sarah and Michael every day. But I held back, because I wanted them to destroy each other. Sarah's chef job was something I arranged this way it would be easy for her to get a weapon. Michael was lured here by me. His lover was a female escort. I had the madam push to her 2 gift certificates for a fixed time slot at this restaurant that I bought. The seats were directly opposite Sarah, it would be hard for her not to see them. Michael was sent to the hospital and ultimately died despite rescue efforts. Later, I heard from Leo that Todd, because he didn't have Michael's money, was struggling to make ends meet, and even followed his parent Kevin into becoming a male escort. When he went out with his classmates, a classmate even hired him. How ironic. Days passed one by one, and life seemed to return to normal. But a call from the hospital caused a ripple in the peaceful life. The doctor said Julia was awake. I could hardly believe my ears. 25 years. She was finally awake. I took Leo and Eleanor and rushed to the hospital right away. In the hospital room, Julia lay quietly on the bed, her face pale, but her eyes were clear. Seeing me, she smiled slightly. David, how did you get so old? My nose stung, and tears streamed down. You slept for so long. I choked up. We've all been waiting for you, for a long time. I pointed to Eleanor and Leo waiting outside the door to come in one by one. Julia's gaze fell on Leo, and she asked who he was. I told her that he was the son we had through IVF. She was stunned for a moment, but also accepted it well. Her gaze towards Leo had a touch of tenderness. She asked what his name was. I replied, his name is Leo. Julia smiled and said softly, Leo, it's a beautiful name.